It's a 10 good minutes for our YouTube audience. A couple games that I really want to focus on last night, and that's Detroit at Charlotte. So almost a little tales from the couch, and then, of course, Cleveland and Denver. So this is a great game in Charlotte between the Pistons and the Hornets. It felt like a playoff game. Then you had a fight. Pistons ended up winning this one, 110-104. It snapped Charlotte's 9-game winning streak. Just a reminder, this team was 4-14 to 25-28. So just an incredible turnaround and a thing that feels very real when we start talking about that group. Like, I went on part of my take this week and they were like, give me your top three in the East. And like, really, the more we started kind of talking it out, I was like, it's Detroit and then it's everybody else. And that everybody else group is a large group, depending on the jockeying, and whatever we think right now may seem foolish in 30 games for how the rest of the season closes out in the seedings in the East. But Detroit's just at another level. And I think the record not only proves that, but when you watch them play, even with some of the deficiencies that you think about with their shooting and some of the scoring options that they may not have, that you'd like to see somebody else be a little dependable when you start projecting out a playoff team here. But this was a really nice response for a bunch of different reasons. So if we jump into the third quarter when the fight happens, and I'm sure you've seen the clips by now, and if you haven't, it was a real fight. So go check it out. Darryn's just going off in the third quarter. I think the frustration by Moussa Diabate against him was what precipitated this whole thing, because Darryn has 7 points in 2 minutes in this stretch in the third quarter. He beasts Diabate, who I like, who's a nice player, but Darryn's just a different level physically. He beasts him in the paint, gets the and one, and then they do kind of a headbutt. It wasn't nasty. I don't know that I'd call it a friendly headbutt, but it was just one of those headbutts, and then Darryn just puts his hand right up in a Moose's face and mushes him and pushes him away. Diabate goes nuts. Diabate was angry the longest I think I've seen a player in a game continuously be angry after everything that happened. Darryn gets pushed to the left corner. Bridges comes over, throws a punch. Darryn gets his hands up. Looks like a southpaw, perhaps. It starts kind of backpedaling a little bit. Diabate tries to get at him again. And then Bridges tries to get at him. And as this whole thing's happening, not surprising, probably shocking it even took this long. Big Stu, third man in the ring. He runs right at Bridges. There's a melee over there. I would have liked to see more on the replay, but the one that I saw, he gets him in a headlock and he's like throwing punches down on him and just trying to mash him. So those four players get ejected. I imagine significant suspensions coming because it was a real fight. It didn't go into the stands, but the courtside seats, you never know what you're going to get at an NBA game. So there was a stretch there where it was kind of just a lot of chaos. So remember now, with these ejections, that means the Pistons are out both centers. Enter B-Ball Paul, who decided to just come in and completely wreck this game. Both the centers are out. He has 8 points, 3 rebounds in 7 minutes. He dives on the ground, forces a turnover against LaMelo, has another ball that he jumps where he ties it up. You get a jump ball. The way he would blitz the ball handler, just his energy was incredible. And it's like Detroit responded to all of this. During the stretch, there was like a 24/7 run going before the fight, after the fight. And it's not necessarily even like the Pistons are just cooking offensively. There was a level of defensive intensity in this game from Detroit that is the kind of stuff that like everybody should be watching and going, we need to be like these guys. And I'm telling you right now, if you waste time, it's a lot like the OKC thing where if you dick around with the ball, they're just going to swarm to you. And then you're not looking to get a basket. You're looking to just get away from everybody to try to start some other version of your offense. And so if you're running this high pick and roll, again, which everybody does, and you're running it to the side especially, and they just blitz you and trap you and, you know, they get their hands on you, it's just hard to even get out of that to get back to anything that resembles some sort of set that you're trying to run. Because at that point, it's all been blown up. And they're so long. Dennis Jenkins is the only small player in their rotation. Everybody else is huge. And it's just a lot to deal with. And it was really, really impressive. On the physicality, Detroit is number one in the NBA in personal fouls called against them per game. It's 22.4. It's not an outrageous number. The Pacers are right behind them. Sometimes you foul a lot because you're physical. Sometimes you foul a lot because you're terrible defensively. There are just guys that reach constantly. Like I saw a maxi foul. Like there's always that maxi foul that drives me crazy. And when I saw it live, I'm like, did he just dribble into Denny against Portland? I have some thoughts on Scoot. Don't worry. And then you watch the rebound or the replay, and you just go, why is Denny trying to reach in and strip the ball away from Maxey as Maxey's going full speed? Like of all the people that you're like, hey, that's probably not going to work against him. So some of these fouls that are called, it doesn't mean you're physical at all. It means you're just kind of stupid. In Detroit's case, they're so physical. And again, back to the old Dick Harder thing of they can't call all of them. So you're better off if you're a smart team of fouling in a way, especially fouling off the ball right now. And they're just not going to call it all that much. I was looking historically at some of the personal foul numbers that are called here, because even that 22.4 this season for Detroit, there's other teams in the last 10 years that have had more fouls called against them. So that might not be the best indicator. I looked at the 80s and 90s. If you look at those decades, average number of fouls that are called per team, per game, it's somewhere between 25 and 22. In 26, we're league average 20 fouls called against a team for each game. I don't know that number means, and I don't want to turn this into an era thing necessarily, but you could argue, more fouls are being called back then. That meant it was a more physical game. Or you could argue, hey, less fouls are being called now. Does that mean it's more physical because you have lesser reward on some of these plays? Now, I think it has more to do with just the clogging of the way the court was set up with the players back then. Again, anytime I bring this up, you just watch it and you kind of just, it's an amazing reminder of like, God, everybody has like a foot in the paint. This is outrageous. So I think a lot of that's just collisions and stuff, probably why you'd have a little bit more fouls, maybe less fouls now because of the spacing and stuff is more out in the open. But I will say it all season long. The stuff that I see on the ball that is called that I think can be a gift to the offensive player who just by any contact, whether he initiates it or not, he gets the call. The stuff off the ball, that's what I would be doing if I'm an NBA coach. I'm like, we are going to push the limits of what is even possible here. No one gets a free release off a screen. Nobody goes to run baseline without getting grabbed. If somebody comes off of a curl, we're hanging on to them. It's a lot like watching an NFL game where the corners and receivers are just battling on a throw. And more often than not, you can't just call PI every time somebody touches somebody else because you'd have a ridiculous game and quarterbacks should just throw it in the air every single time to get the PI. But when you're watching it, you're like, okay, cool, they're letting them play. I think off the ball right now, the league is letting these guys play. So to close this one out, once Charlotte fought back in this game, credit to the Hornets here, the Hornets did a better job on going, we can't just kind of get into our pick and roll and then reset and see if we have the mismatch versus the ball handler. Because again, there's not many mismatches to hunt here with this Detroit team at all. So if it's just a size thing and like Dennis Jenkins isn't out there, you're kind of like, all right, well, who do we actually want to attack? Do we want to attack Cade because his footwork might not be? All right, whatever. Offensively, I thought they did some cool things with this Knipple-LaMelo pick and roll where Knipple is the screener, but he's already releasing to kind of this, I always call it like this escape valve option. And so you keep two with the ball handler to cut off LaMelo, but LaMelo, the beauty of him is that he's so tall, and again, he's a great passer. He can just throw it over the top of the pressure. Then you have Knipple playing 4-on-3, and then Knipple's decision-making is spectacular on top of everything else that he does almost perfectly. It's something they were better at. They're like, hey, we can't just wait. Like, invite the two, get it to Knipple. Now we're playing 4-on-3. It used to be the old stuff that Steph and Draymond used to do when Steph would just get doubled. He would invite the double. Steph would pass it. And Draymond was such a great playmaker. Again, he's playing 4-on-3 behind the pressure. Just a couple plays that I love from this game. So Knipple gets it cooking a little bit from 3. And I'm telling you, the kids that are listening, the parents that still let them listen, Knipple finds the slots on the 3-point line off of the drives like he's been playing this game for 20 years. Well, I guess he has had a ball in his hand probably for 20 years, but you get the point. It's a really simple thing, but if he's off and he like starts in the corner or he's closer to the top of the key, he will watch where the defense is aligned. It's not like he's the only one that does this, but the fact that he's already doing this is just so impressive. He just slots himself as a much easier outlet. And now some ball handlers hate that. The great Luka passes into the corner. It's 1 part Luka, and 2, he always knows that that player is supposed to be there. It's the same thing with Jokic. Like if you're not in the corner and then it ends up being a turnover, Luka or Jokic aren't like, hey, bad pass by me. They're like, why are you moving at all? And I know that it's a little different, but there's some of these spectacular corner passes where sometimes the reaction is like, I can't believe you saw him. It's like, well, because he knows that he's always going to be there. And again, some of the passes are still ridiculous, but if you know that the person's never necessarily moving, so you'll see some guys that move or kind of come up from the corner to try to find necessarily a better angle, and then the ball handler gets really mad at them because they're like, you're never supposed to move. Whatever it is with Knipple, it's probably also LaMelo's vision. Knipple he's not going to stay glued to one spot if he thinks a defender is going to cut off that pass. And once you start to understand that with your teammates, it's just something else that you're thinking about. This one play with Knipple, as I said, he's coming off of this curl. He's going to get it right at the three-point line with momentum. And he just does a great job on these slight delays. It also speaks to like the athletes that I freak out about before the draft. And then there's these athletes where it's a little harder to find, but their athleticism is just as impactful as maybe the guy that's hitting his head on the rim. But Knipple's athleticism is a catch and a slight delay, a look, and total balance, and then attack off of that or get the shot if he has any space. On this one play that I'm thinking about last night, he gets it at the top of the key on this curl. He's heading to the right side of the three-point line. And Detroit freaks with two defenders being like, we got to get out on him. We got to contest the three. Right? And that's a credit to them being locked in on what he's doing and the effort that they're playing with. Knipple, slight delay, but he knows I'm not going to get this shot off. Let me keep the dribble alive off this kind of like slight little head raise as if I'm going to get ready to take a shot. And now he's driving. Detroit kind of recovers because there's two defenders on him. So he drives, but there's not enough room for him to get the shot off. And then he finds LaMelo in that left corner, three-point line, hits the three. Remarkable stuff. Also, a lot of credit to Detroit and Bernie Bickerstaff and his crew for how creative they are on getting Cade Cunningham the ball back. I love what they do, and it's why it's so important for them to feel really good about a secondary ball handler, what they've tried with a couple different people in the past. But they wanted Cade against LaMelo. You're also looking in the minutes where obviously, Diabate's ejected from the game. Kalkbrenner had some moments, but Charles Lee, who then was thrown out, and I agreed with him being thrown out because it was a ridiculous flop by, I think it was Paul Reed on that play with Grant Williams where they're setting up their offense. There's a slight collision. Reed flops. They call the foul on Grant. It was an awful call. Lee gets ejected, which again, I understood his frustration. But Charlotte wanted to close small. The problem is if you're getting Cade going downhill and the help defender's Grant Williams at the rim, and Grant was really good last night, it's just, you're not going to have the same thing, obviously, as a Diabate or a Kalkbrenner, who they didn't want to close with. More and more teams are closing small. I notice it constantly where they're just going, you know what, I think I'm going to go back. This fascination because it was new, like, hey, small ball, the Warrior stuff and whatever, and then the shift kind of back to bigs and the league got big again. I just felt like this year, or I feel like this year so far, I'm seeing teams choose to go or at least close with the smaller lineups. But on the Cade stuff, they'll say, all right, we want to attack LaMelo with Cade. We're not just going to bring LaMelo's guy up and now let's start the whole thing over again and be super predictable where everybody knows where the play is starting from. They will run like two off-ball screens. Somebody else has the ball, and then that player is on LaMelo somehow, and then it's a handoff curl thing to Cade. Cade now has momentum going downhill, and now LaMelo has to go back to him. So it's not just straight hunting. It's really creative movement, multiple screens, multiple things going on. And then Cade's just going to be able to finish basically over anybody, especially with some of the lineups that Charlotte had to go with because of the Diabate ejection. 104, 101, Tobias Harris, ISO jumper. I hadn't noticed him in an hour. Essentially was the game winner. Cleveland at Denver. Harden's second game with the Cavs. He's been 23-8-2. Last night, 22-10-7. 5 minutes in, I'm immediately looking at the staggering of Mitchell and Harden, and it's a real thing. This may be incredibly boring for some of you. I wrote it down, so you have to listen to it. Mitchell out 5 minutes in to the first quarter. Then Harden's out at 3:34. Mitchell comes in. Harden in at 9:06 of the second quarter. Mitchell out at 8:27. 3:58 of the second quarter, Mitchell back in. They closed together for the last 3:58 of the first half. Third quarter, again, 5 minutes into it, Mitchell comes out. He comes back in at 4:16. Harden's out at 3:44 left of the third quarter. At 10:01 left in the fourth quarter, as Mitchell was still in, Harden comes back in. Mitchell's out 2 minutes later at 8:11. He comes back in at 5:11. And then they closed with both of them for the last 5 minutes. Really liked Harden's game last night. The playmaking, never in a hurry. Thought he had some huge moments, and he had that three where it could have been an and one three. That was just a massive part of their run when they closed this one out. A 15-6 run in Denver to close this game out. Little surprised that the Nuggets didn't bring Jokic back until, let me see here. It was late. 3:24 left in the game. Felt like it was like, all right, this is starting to get away from you a little bit on some of these offensive possessions. Jared Allen against Jokic. I mean, Jokic is always calm, but he must love having the Allen matchup. And it didn't matter because Cleveland had winning the game, so I guess the rule is we can't get too excited about any stuff. But it's almost like Allen gets too much of his body into Jokic, and Jokic is like, great, put your body all over me. I know exactly where you are. I can feel you. I can feel every angle. And it's like an even slower, more methodical attack. So if they're in the finals, write that one down. Because I would say to Allen, and there was no Mobley last night. Again, Aaron Gordon's still out. Fit looked great. But Allen, I think, uses too much body on Jokic. And Jokic is in complete control, especially when he gets it like empty on that side of it, which is just not going to happen all that often. I also was kind of looking at like some of the Harden stuff because like the floater doesn't feel, I got to check these numbers, but I don't feel like that floater, once he gets downhill, is as much of a weapon for him anymore. So I think I'd invite him in a little bit more instead of trying to get body on him and then worrying about the free throws. And he had one against Cam Johnson that was terrible, but it wasn't part of the game. Cam Johnson was losing shit. I don't blame him. But then on the other side, when he was in there with Mitchell, something I'll continue to look at is when Harden's off of the ball and he's like swinging it back to Mitchell's side, you're looking at like 4 sets of eyes just waiting for Mitchell. And I always think about this and how you construct a team. It's like, okay, well, I'd love to have 2 on-ball attackers at least. Right? But if one can't shoot, does that kind of defeat the purpose? So, of course, you'd want 2 shooters that are also on-ball attackers, which is kind of what you had in a best-case scenario with Mitchell and Garland. And we know with Harden, he can shoot it, and he's terrific with the playmaking. The lobs to Mobley, the lobs to Allen are going to be great. But once again, when he's off of the ball, he's kind of done with the possession. And I worry about that, not necessarily in the regular season, but also, more importantly, in the playoffs. So again, just something to think about here. Since Jokic has come back for the Nuggets, they're 2-4. The schedule's been pretty tough, though. Clippers, OKC, Detroit, New York, Cleveland. There's another game in there. Cleveland, by the way, you may not have noticed this. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They're a game and a half behind New York and Boston, who are tied for the 2 seed. So the Cavs are a game and a half behind the 2 seed right now. Knicks have been playing great basketball as well. But if you had to sit there and think about it today, and you're like, who is the 2 seed in the East? As I talk about like the 2 from however deep you want to go, how open of a mind you have to have about some of these teams. I don't know if Philly will close with enough of a record because of, who's going to be available for them. As much as I've liked Toronto this year, I still have a harder time thinking like, hey, I think that's a top 4 seed team. The Boston thing still shocks me. I still hold out hope for Orlando. I don't really think much about Miami at this point. And then there's the Charlotte part of this. If they stay on the pace since that 4-14 start, like there's just a lot of things that are possible when you think about the East. And the Cavs being the 2 seed is, again, the standings are the standings here, but I think it's a very easy thing to overlook here because they're not going to have the same 64-win record as they did last year, but they're going to close better than they probably were with the Garland injuries because at the very least, whatever you think of Harden, he's going to play and he's going to produce the rest of the regular season. How come it's taking you 20 minutes to get to Scoot Henderson? I wanted to lead with it. Others thought maybe that wasn't the best deal. So Scoot, my guy, has been back with the Trailblazers for 2 games. He was 12, 2, and 7 last night, 10 free throw attempts. It's not the points. It is the thing that I loved about him the most before the draft is that when you get the ball to Scoot in the just outlet, right? Defensive board, outlet to Scoot. He doesn't want to dribble from the catch of the outlet all the way down and set up the offense. He wants to get the ball up the court. And for a young player, that amazed me. Because usually when you're this kind of profile, coming out of high school and everything, it's like, well, I score, so I want the ball. I want to keep the ball as long as I can to see if I'm going to get my buckets. And Scoot was actually like wired a different way. Where he's like, if I think another guy has an advantage or it's a one-on-one, I don't even need to take a dribble. Maybe I take one dribble and I'll get it up to the next guy. He had a bunch of these plays last night. And he had 2 lobs that were terrific. But there was even some other just half-court passing where he just wants to move the ball so quickly. And again, the thing now for Scoot with him not getting off to the great career based on how much I liked him before the draft and that high selection, Brandon Miller's been the better player, no question. Scoot's missed the entire season up until the last 2 games. So the hope of like, can he be a star? That doesn't feel great right now. The hope of can he be a starting point guard on a team and like really be the starting point guard, not just be the starter that year based on a bunch of other circumstances. The shooting we need to get better. The finishing at the rim stuff is still concerned because you kind of wanted him to be a little juicier as an athlete, and it may not necessarily be that. But the quick ball movement, getting the ball up the court as much as you can, always putting that pressure on the defense with passing as opposed to dribbling is why I was so impressed with him as a young player. And it was great to see some of that stuff last night. NBA Mailbag, NBAMailbagRR at gmail.com. We bring in Ceruti for a couple questions. What's up?
How we doing?
I'm great, man. Great to see you.
You too. We got a lot to get to, actually. I have a couple questions for you, but I guess let's just do this. When you sent this to me, people, taking shots. I'm still getting flack over the Cooper Flag and Thompson thing. So let's just read this email. This is from John. Because a few years ago, Ceruti mentioned Lauri Markkanen being ranked above Franz Wagner, and immediately afterwards, Markkanen had a career year. That is true. By the way, I was only mad. It's not like I didn't like Lauri. I was only mad. It was like a breakout of the year thing. Turns out I was wrong. Still think Franz is awesome. Didn't dislike Lauri. I did apologize in person to Markkanen, by the way, at the All-Star game that year. So shouts out to Lauri for being a good sport. But yes, I was in fact wrong in that instance. Then he also says, and then Ceruti picks Ben Thompson over Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag then goes on an epic stretch and now is like basically, would you take 5 guys in the league over him? Probably not. So he's saying, should Ceruti choose someone he'd rather have that's obviously worse than Paolo and Franz? Basically go like a reverse psychology situation. He said, I might get clowned, but the Magic would be playing well, so it would be worth it. So I guess he's saying like, I should just publicly be like, you know what? Scotty Barnes is better than Paolo and Franz, or I'd rather have this guy. Pick some random guy just to do the reverse psychology thing. I like the idea, but I don't give out fake takes. Sometimes I just tell you how it is and I'm wrong. It's okay.
The Lowry thing was specific, though, as you said. It was about this list where it was egregious to not have Franz on the list. And so I think your ire was pointed towards Lowry because Lowry had been in the league for a bunch. It was weird for him to even be on the list, considering how long he'd been in the league, and then he absolutely lit it up. But I think it was more list construction to have your back there a little bit, because I do remember that one. Because I remember looking at it and being like, what? This is a weird
And I was
list.
still wrong. It's okay. I was wrong, and shout out to Markkanen. Had a great year. My thing was like, we've seen Markkanen for a while. Like, I think I know who he is, and we didn't. He had an awesome breakout year. And
who would you rather have?
Franz.
Yeah. And then Cooper, who would you rather have?
Yeah, I mean, I still really like Ben, but it's Cooper. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Because at the time, I mean, we were talking about like, hey, like, is he really going to be a one? Is he just like a great connecting piece? Is he like the one on a title team? And I think there was some conversation about that. Clearly, that's not true now, and he seems like he's destined for the Hall of Fame and stardom and all those things. So that's great, but that one was definitely wrong. I would like to say, speaking of Scoot, like I do get things right. I did like Brandon Miller ahead of Scoot in that draft. Like, we get things right, we get things wrong. It happens. It's okay. Not gonna bat 1,000. You
usually are reminded of the things you get wrong. So.
Correct.
There you go.
Correct.
Welcome to business.
It's okay. It's fine. Speaking of the Jazz, speaking of Markkanen, I had this question for you though. Did you watch the Jazz Magic game last week? Probably not. We kind of got lost in the Super Week thing, but
yeah, I went back and watched it because everybody was mad about it. So I had a couple, like The hard thing with football weekend stuff, and now that it's over, it probably won't happen. But every now and then I would catch myself because, like, on Monday, I'd start watching Saturday, Sunday games before the Monday games would tip. And then I get caught up in the Monday. So it turns into like a 6-7 hour NBA night and then, like, look, with Detroit, Charlotte, I want to watch the entire game. OKC, San Antonio over the weekend. Like, I was in my hotel room and I'm going, I want to watch this entire game. And then I realize, oh, wait, OKC's not playing everybody. So this one may not be as important. And the same thing last night with Lakers. Like, SGA's out, Luka's out. I watched the second half. I'm not going to watch the full game of that because I don't feel that I need to. I actually like my approach better now, is I'm watching more games, but I'm not. I used to just go, I have to watch the entire game start to finish. And it's just harder to fit as many games in. So I would prioritize however many games. And here's the other thing. You can have 4 screens up. I don't give a fuck who you are. You could be Larry Brown. You're not going to really know what's going on. And it's not like you have to track every single time of how they're playing pick and roll and what they want to do and who.
I think you can do that in football, like on a Sunday. But
football, you can have multiple screens up. There's so much dead time. So the 4-screen NBA guy that's telling me he's locked in and figuring out everything that's going on, I think you're entirely full of shit.
Fair. The only reason I can do two.
I can do 2.
Yeah,
but that's about it.
The only reason I asked you about that game is because it did bring up this new sort of like hatred for tanking again. And you and other people have talked about like how disgusting it's probably going to get for the last couple months here this regular season. And the first, I think, glimpse of it was because like teams started getting fined for basically just sitting guys for like mystery illnesses. So now, and this isn't terribly new, but it's certainly something that's like rearing its ugly head again. The Jazz were up 17 third quarter against the Magic, like cruising. Triple J looked good, although they call him Quadruple J. Jazz Jaren Jackson Jr. now. I kind of like that. Laurie was playing well, speaking of him. And then they basically just sat. Keontae George got hurt earlier in the game, so he was out already. But they basically sat their starters in the fourth quarter. Magic came back, and it was like an incredibly disgusting tanking job by the Jazz. And I was happy Magic won. They didn't deserve it, but they did get that in the fourth quarter. And people were critical of the Jazz for saying, "Hey, you just basically sat everyone and just gave the Magic a win." This is people are paying to come to these basketball games. Just interested in what you thought. It was ugly, but I get why the Jazz are doing it.
They did it again last night, and they won in Miami.
Yep.
So
the Jazz are sneaky too good. Shout out to your boy Will Hardy.
Yeah. So they closed with Collier, Sensabaugh, Ace, Filipowski, Cody Williams, and Lowry and Jaren Jackson and Nurkic all played 25 minutes. So they're all on a 25-minute restriction. I will say this now. I will say it again. I will say it loudly. I don't give a fuck how you tank. If the goal is that you have to tank, if you're the Jazz and your pick is top 8 protected, you've got to do whatever you can. Are you worried about every other fan base that doesn't really care about you, or every media member that's on the air being like, I'd like you to tank, but do it in a way that's more digestible for me? There are no rules in this. Is Washington more ethical because Trey and AD apparently aren't going to play? Like, what the fuck is that? Do you know what the closing unit was for the Bulls last night? Nobody does. I've got it for you.
By all means, read it out.
Modest, Sexton, Anthony Simons, Okoro, Yabu, until they replaced Yabu with Nick Richards. I did not expect to watch an NBA game where those were the 5 guys closing a game that they lost to the Nets to on top of everything else. The goal is to do what is best for your franchise, not to lose games in a way that people can be less critical of. I mean, granted, Hinkie took it to a whole new level. We've covered it all the time, but we're just strange. There's a bunch of different reasons why we are, as human beings, odd, but we have this incredibly annoying flaw of that we can know what it is that you're doing, but we want it packaged in a way,
don't be honest,
where we feel better about it. And it's like, why would Austin Ainge, Justin Zanuck, Will Hardy, why would anyone with the Jazz give a shit how gross it is? Because the goal is, I want this pick to land in the top 8, so I'm not giving it to anybody else. That is the most, you don't need to apologize to it, because there are different versions of the exact same thing that you're doing that somehow are more ethical. I don't care about ethical tanking. It is all unethical. I accept it.
You like ethical hoopers, but you don't care about ethical tanking.
Ethical hooper is very important to me. Ethical tanking is, it's like asking a burglar to clean up after himself. Like, I don't.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny too because like the top 3 teams in the sport right now. I mean, if you just go by record, Thunder, Pistons, and Spurs all did some version of tanking at some point. Not necessarily to get exactly where they are, but like it's part of the sport. It just kind of is, Yeah.
The craziest thing, the Pelicans are like winning some games here, 2 in a row, 3-3 in their last
Don't
6.
let them get hot,
But they're winning some games, and it's just like, imagine if they still had their pick, what it would look like. The funny thing with the Sacramento Kings, who've lost, 13 in a row? I mean, Sabonis sat out. Murray's had this ankle thing. So I think at least with him, I mean, he hasn't played in like a month. So that feels a little bit more real. Levine didn't even play last night. So, nobody even cares about like that specific Jazz one feels gross when there's somebody that's going to go on TV and get super mad about it. It's like, we could just go through and be like, why is this more palatable than this is to you? It's all the same shit with different packaging. So let's stop freaking out about it.
All right. Well, speaking of tanking and load management, I guess is a good segue. Arizona upset by Kansas last night at Fog Allen. Pretty awesome game. Darryn Peterson, maybe the number 1 pick in the draft, sits out again. I think it's his 11th game, 9 with a hamstring, 1 with the flu, which was last night, and an ankle. What do you? We haven't really talked about this on the show. I'd like to maybe do a guest situation in the future on this, but it is odd. He's like kind of like a Kawhi of college, but he's very quiet about it. Bill Self doesn't say much about it, and yet, I think right now he'd go 1, even with all the question marks. I guess. Have you heard anything about it? Like, what do you think about the Darryn Peterson situation at Kansas?
I've watched him a bunch now because it's just, hey, welcome Russillo to college hoops. I always love watching Kansas play. I love Bill Self. I love that gym. I can't believe I haven't been yet, especially with some of these games where you just go, why don't you just look at the schedule a couple weeks out and show up to Fog Allen and go to one of these games, especially now with the lighter schedule. And I say it every year, and then the year goes by. Same thing with Kentucky. Like I want to go to a Kentucky game at some point, but I've always kind of wanted to line it up with a football game, which I know doesn't make any sense, but I still have 4 SEC schools that I haven't been to, and Kentucky's one of them for football. So whatever, maybe we'll wait it out, see how the new regime does. I don't know that it's really going to matter because I think he's that good. I don't know what to make of it. It's really, really weird. I've read different stuff. I've talked to different people about it. I've heard a bunch of different theories on it because some people were like, look, if you go back to high school, like this was an issue with this leg thing, this cramping thing that he's had in the past. So this isn't new. Now, is he shutting it down because he knows he's going to go number 1? And then does that say something about the evaluation of him if you think it's close? Like if you thought it was really close with him, and I really think there's only 2 other guys that are in the conversation at this point with him. Does that break the tie, or is there just no tie and it doesn't really matter? I don't know if it has everything to do with the NIL. I used to always think like when we were in this one and done phase, which we've been in for a really long time now, not necessarily so much with all the compensation financially, that's like 5 years, but I always thought there was going to be a player like a lesser school that lit it up, and then January was going to go, hey, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm going lottery. That was the whole goal. It doesn't really matter. I just don't think you're that susceptible to a career-altering injury in basketball. To be honest, I just don't think it happens all that much. And if you were that good, like Wembanyama could have probably lost a finger. He probably could have blown out both Achilles and gone number 1. So Peterson,
that's actually a great question. Like, would Wemby with 9 fingers still go number 1?
Definitely.
Left hand? Yeah. Left hand.
What number of fingers would Wemby have to go number 2? Like he has 4 total?
Yeah.
Wow, he's pretty long though.
Yeah. Moves well.
Yeah. Moves well. Changes the game. Doesn't have to score really to change the game and impact. You see his net rating stuff?
Get the paw up there. It doesn't matter how many fingers there are.
I need to be convinced by somebody that knows this world better than me that this is totally about who he is, how he's wired, and that he's screwing over Kansas with this thing. And I've not yet to hear that from enough people that I totally trust. I mean, I know that it's out there. I don't know if it's him going, hey, I've already made some. I mean, on top of everything else, with the compensation part of it, you go, how does that work? Like, hey, this is how much we're going to pay you to come here. You're this huge recruit. And then you just get to keep all that money. And you're sitting there being like, I want to play a little. I don't want to play. But then why is he ever playing? Like, why wouldn't he just if it's about injury and preserving himself, why wouldn't he just go like, hey, I'm hurt? Or does it have to be hurt in a way that doesn't feel like it's any kind of injury that prevents him from starting the 26-27 team with whichever team drafts him? So I don't have any answers for you other than I think it's as strange as you think it is. And I don't know if it's just dirty business or if it's a kid that's actually just incredibly unlucky. And like I said, I don't feel really fair speculating, even though I know people are really sick of it. And then they beat Arizona on top of everything else without him.
It's kind of funny though, too, like, because I've seen people say, and you mentioned like Bill Self, saying, "Hey, I feel sorry for Bill Self," yada yada. I don't know that I feel sorry. I mean, this is kind of the game you play, I think, when you get these one and done guys, and they're not actually that successful. Like, how many one and done guys have won a title? Like, true one and done guys have won titles in college that have like been the guy on the team. It's like Carmelo and Anthony Davis. Am I missing anybody? Like, it's not like these guys like guarantee you any. I mean, I don't know. I think they're a little bit over, especially like the teams that win are the older teams, right? The teams that are more like, the 50-year guys, the transfers that go in, like those guys, those teams typically do better. The one and done guys are a little bit more of a risk because one, like, you're not sure exactly how invested they're going to be, and two, they just don't know the sport as well as maybe a 50-year senior does or a fourth-year guy does. So I don't really feel bad for Bill Self unless he was like sold some sort of false bill of goods here.
Yeah, I understand. I don't know that anybody's looking at it being like, oh, poor Self. I think if anything, maybe it's that BYU game that's in my head here, but there's a lot of guys in this team that I like. Like Tiller's good, Council's good, Badunga. I forget if I'm getting that name right or wrong. He's a sophomore. He's been there a couple of years. But watching that BYU game, I'm like, this team is better than just Peterson, and obviously they've had to be. But Arizona was rolling, and they get him at Fogg last night. A good one.
Well, interested to see how it unfolds, and we'll try to get a guest on this because I think it is. The other thing I was asking people at Super Week this, speaking of the draft, just selfishly, like, who was a better prospect, Boozer this year, Boozer or Paolo at Duke, because they're kind of similar build guys, and I'm just like interested in that. I didn't get a clear answer. Maybe we got to ask our guy Vicini about that, because I'd want to know, like, just not obviously now with what we've seen from Paolo, but coming out of Duke, both guys, who was the better prospect. So maybe we'll do some draft stuff coming up.
Yeah, we should because it's going to be a really fun class. And like I said, I always feel guilty because I'm just always behind on the whole thing. Because if I was on it week in and week out, I would have already had Sam Vicini on a couple different times.
Yeah,
on top of everything else, Vicini's great in the NBA. He wrote a trade column that I still think is one of the best things. It was like 5 trades that he'd like to see happen, and I couldn't believe that all 5 were totally reasonable and all made sense. So that's really hard to do. Hey, we made it under 40 minutes for a good 10 minutes. Again, our NBA mailbag is NBAMailbagRR@gmail.com. And check out the full podcast, The Ryen Russillo Show, Barstool Sports.